So for my presentation, I decided to do the ethical dimensions of racial profiling. As the United States becomes a more and more diversified nation, the nation also continues to work on building a more robust security and immigration enforcement system. However, not everyone agrees with the course the U.S. government has chosen to take on enforcing its immigration laws. One doesn't have to look far to see how protecting the lives and liberties of Americans in the process of welcoming new immigrants to the United States can become so convoluted that the rule of law in this country becomes blurred in regards to immigration policies. For example, there has been a huge clash of power between the state of California and the federal government over the state's sanctuary city policy, which once again is in the news as the fight for justice for Kate Steinle continues. Kate Steinle was shot to death by an illegal immigrant named Garcia Zarate, who experts say had been deported at least 6 times before. An article by the Washington Post by Barbash and Bever describes the sanctuary city policy of California as a policy where local law enforcement authorities have declined to participate in immigration enforcement, which they say is the responsibility of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, so known as ICE. The article continues on by saying that even though Garcia had recently been convicted and imprisoned for a marijuana charge, local officials had not notified ICE, which was seeking to deport him, and he was released. The problem here isn't just a dispute over who has jurisdiction over those who illegally enter a country, but the complete ignorance by a local law enforcement agency to enforce the federal law of the United States, which has the potential to create further problems. Incidents such as that of the death of Kate Steinle, one that has received a huge amount of media coverage, can often lead to different minority groups being stigmatized and leave feelings of injustice if those members fail to receive justice for their evil actions. This is especially the case if members of those minority groups are continuously shown to act in a manner that portrays their ethnicity as violent or dangerous. Even more problematic than the influence that the media may have on the perceptions of members of society is the influence that these types of incidents can play on the perceptions of officers of the law. Media coverage of these events and incidents that are encountered by law enforcement officers can influence the selection of who police officers choose to stop if they perceive members of different minority groups as problem causers, which can lead to the ethical issue of police profiling. This article analyzes the different scenarios and factors that play into leading an officer to profile different ethnic groups, as well as what ethical ideologies are involved in leading an officer to engage in profiling. Most immigrants trying to cross the border into the United States do so because of the advantages of living here compared to Latin America. Illegal immigration is economical in nature because most of the idea of the American dream, and by moving here they can make a better life for themselves and their loved ones and find gainful employment. However, they usually don't have the funds to come over here legally, so they try to go across undetected and go around the immigration system. So sociological in respect to the cultural differences seen between the two countries, what might be legal over Mexico may not be so for the United States. For example, an article by Reuters discusses how marijuana just became legal over Mexico. The article states that the ruling eliminates the prohibition and criminalization of acts related to the medicinal use of marijuana and its scientific research, and those related to the production and distribution of the plant for these purposes. It could potentially be an issue if those from Mexico come over here without knowing that the local jurisdictional laws regarding weed are stopped and are found in possession with weed and possess an ID card for marijuana from Mexico. They may be arrested because it's not legal in the jurisdiction they were stopped. Another issue that may arise from legal immigration is conflicts rising from the slow process of Americanization and adopting the culture and values of the United States, because they often don't speak the language at first and don't know how to communicate with those who might be here unless they know someone or have family members who know how to get what they need here in the United States. It's likely that if values are not shared and if they don't know the law or how things are supposed to work over here, then it's likely that tensions could rise between them and another person if they were to meet someone who has different cultural values than that of the individuals who live here. Those opposed to undocumented immigrants living in the United States often cite competition for jobs and use the governmental support that those against undocumented workers in America feel are unjustified because they didn't come here legally and are not citizens entitled to those governmental funds, so says the Cato Institute. Access and allowance of these subsidies could potentially be a trigger for a law enforcement officer who may perceive this as threatening, and even though they are supposed to remain impartial, this could potentially lead them to seek out illegal immigrants to get justice for abusing subsidies that are supposedly only for citizens. Another potentially risky program that could be potential grounds for racial profiling is the Secure Communities program developed by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. According to Pickett 2016, this program allows police officers to compare fingerprints collected from suspects to an immigration database, but it's problematic in that it has given local police officers the ability to arrest individuals for the very purpose of booking them and having their immigration status screened, without regard to whether that arrest leads to any criminal prosecution. The availability of this program can easily become troublesome by leading police officers away from going after criminal actors and enforcing the law like they are supposed to targeting minority groups just to find illegal immigrants. Another area that could potentially be a cause for racial profiling against a particular demographic could be the nature of the crime that was perpetrated. When a violent crime is committed against a police officer and that officer is either assaulted or killed in the line of duty, officers close to the officer that was involved in that incident might harbor retaliatory notions to go after the person that committed the act of violence against their fellow officer. According to Leguy, relative to similar stunts before 2 shootings in the New York City Police Department, police officers by black suspects in 2007-2011, use of physical force by police officers against blacks increased substantially by 16% and 13.3%. There are many causes for this response by officers, such as the percentage of demographics located in the jurisdiction that is being policed, the description that the officers made of the person that did the shooting, or even a belief that it has been recognized over all the crimes that have been reported by police officers in that jurisdiction. A particular group is causing trouble. No matter what the cause, the ethical dilemma raised here is based off the old adage of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The increase of force against African Americans in New York City and the rise of police profiling in the Latino community represents an example of the neutralization theory and the mentality of us versus them. The neutralization occurs as police officers choose to justify ramping up their force on who they stop, perhaps through the belief that they are doing the right thing by profiling, because the groups they are profiling either represent a group that poses a perceived threat or no harm against officers. In essence, police profiling represents the theory of ethical relativism, which according to Belshaw means that morality is relative to a particular culture or social group. What may be considered to be good in one community may not be so in another. Police officers participating in racial profiling may do so unintentionally or unintentionally. Intentionally, they may choose to seek out people that represent what they perceive to be a menace to society. Unintentionally, they may wind up profiling people because of specific programs or laws that have been put into place that may unintentionally target individuals' activities that specific ethnic groups and community view as morally right. Responses that may lead to more trust between these groups should be based around community policing approaches that can help bridge the gap between what each group understands to be right and wrong and highlight specific issues that need to be addressed within those communities, instead so that police officers in that community can discover what they need to look out for, who are the real troublemakers in that community, and work on building trust between the citizens of the community they are policing.